Okay, so working on Tic Tac Toe, and we need to find winners. We've got 3 in a row here, and we need to know that that's in fact a win, and that the game should be over. And just kind of mention this in the other video. So what are we going to look for? We're going to look to see if our variables are set up to look like a win. So if this was the case, then we know that that's a win. And there's a couple things to think about here. I mean, the easiest way to do this would be just to look, to see if these are all equal to 1. So let's do that. Let's put them all back to 0. And let's look in mouse pressed. There's a few different ways we could think about this, but we'll start there. So now remember, if we're trying to write code in mouse press, we have to be aligned, indented, just like the rest of the code. So there's the beginning of mouse press. That's the one indent, the first indent, which is 4 spaces right now on processing. To be careful if you copy and paste code in Python, especially in the processing editor, it sometimes has troubles maintaining the tab spacing. Most tabs actually are spaced 2 spaces now, so just watch out for that. I should probably change that in my preferences there. Okay, so we're talking about the middle left. Does that equal 1? We use that Boolean AND that we talked about before. The middle, does that equal 1? And does middle right equal 1? And let's just do a print statement here. Winner 1. Middle row or something, I don't know. It's just a tracing statement. We're going to take that out. At some point we just want to know if obviously that one won, but we didn't check for that, so that's not printing. Oh, that was multiple clicks there. And when it did become a 1, it printed the statement. So this is working. That worked. It's not going to work for there. So you'll see it's printing out the clicks, the coordinates of the clicks. There's the middle click. It's between 200 and 400 and 200 and 400. So that's the last click there on the middle that set it to an O. And it did not print out that it was a winner because it didn't check for 2's here. So we're going to have to repeat that for a player 2 winning. So let's do that. And it could be an elif here too. Obviously it's the same kind of thinking. If player 1 and player 2 can't both win the game at the same time, there can't be a win in different positions at the same time. So this could be the beginning of an if statement that does 1, 2, 3 rows, 1, 2, 3 columns, and 2 diagonals. So 8 checks for player 1 and 8 checks for player 2. That's going to be 16 if statements. So that might get, well, I won't do all of those in this video. I'll just do enough to get them started. So we can win with X as well now. And oops, again, I don't know what's happened there. So here's a winner, middle row. Maybe I should have said the player 2 at that point, just to be sure that that was what happened. Is this going to do yeah, well, there's a bug in here. This is not alternating on, did I miss that? Here. So this was bottom left. And look at that, I missed that. So test. All right, so I should be able to generate a win for player 2 without clicking more than once. And X's are 1s. I have to go back and check my and of course I can change them to be O's. So these are both working, and I'm getting both tracing statements out for 1 and 2. Okay, so let's end the game if something like that happens. How should we do that? You know, if the game were over, then maybe we should just have a big message right here over top, like game over or X wins, whatever you want it to say. That has to happen in the draw loop, which means you'd have to think about this. You'd either have to move all your checks into draw and check there, which you could do, and that would work. I like to check when there's, I like to check in mouse press because that's when the actual win is occurring, when someone clicks the mouse. So it seems to me to be the most sensible place for doing this stuff. But there's some arguments for moving it into draw. But, I think I'd like to use a Boolean variable. So I would like to manage whether or not the game is over. Okay? And we can make this a Boolean variable. So manage if game is over. Should be kind of obvious by the name of the variable. It's a Boolean because I've made it false. That's a capital F. Okay, lowercase f is not a valid type. Okay, it's trying to think. It thinks it's a variable that isn't created, so it's giving you an error there. So this is false. Okay, and it's the same as if you said. It's the same thing that you get when you check for a condition that's not true. You kind of get a false, and because it's a Boolean, it only has two values. It can either be false, which means the game is on, and it can be true, which means the game is over. So those are the two values we're going to deal with. And why are we doing this? Well, if we said down in mouse pressed, if we found that there was a win, okay, then we could make, so I will set the game to be over here. The game is over, so I make it true. That means the game is done. So middle row for 1 will trigger that, and this is a global variable. So what I'd like to do is print out a message if the game is over. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here. Maybe, you know what, I'll just throw something down on the bottom of the draw loop. I'll just draw a really big, this makes no sense, but I'm just going to draw a really big ellipse in the center of the screen, kind of center of the screen, a really big ellipse. Okay, if the game is over. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how to get this game over thing working properly. So let's see, I think it was for 1, which is O, which is X, sorry. I think I put it in the X position. There, okay, so, and you see the big ellipse. So what happened? I played a win on middle row with player 1, which changed the global variable game over. It changed, it was currently false. So, because it was false, oh, I should explain this here. Because it was false, it was basically, it was ignoring this because this is checking to see if game over is true. That means the game is supposed to be done. And if it is, it draws the big ellipse. It was false initially at the beginning when I set that variable, so it didn't draw the ellipse. But when the if statement detected the win, it changed that global Boolean variable, game over, to false. And false this is not true. This is getting confusing to explain this. But game over equals true is not the case when game over equals false, right? So, but when I changed it to true, that if statement was activated, and it drew the ellipse. Now you don't actually have to say does it equal true because it's a Boolean and it already either equals true or false. So I'd much prefer to just do that. Okay, I'll just leave it there for you to see that. So this says, hey, is this true? This is an if statement. It checks a condition. This condition is just a Boolean variable. It's either true or false. If it's true, which is made true when there's a win, then it draws this ellipse. Hope that makes sense. And if it was, if we ended this when turn was equal to 1, well, we could say something like, hey, game over, X wins. And this text command, you can look it up in the reference manual. It needs coordinates for where it's going to appear on the screen, so you can find a better spot, but I'll just throw it down there. Let's try that. No game over, we got to make X win, X is the 1, and X is the 1, X is the 1. So we checked for middle row 1, we turned it to, this happened before with the text command. Let's just put that crazy ellipse back in, wherever it was. Why did I not see that text? Oh, winner middle row 1. Oh, now this is confusing, isn't it? It was player 1 who won the game, but of course because I ran switch turns, it's now set to 2. So that's super confusing. We can deal with it though. I don't know what to do here. I think, you might find a better way to deal with this. It's actually 2 who won. Actually, player set to 2 now because it clicked when player 1 won the game. It also switched turns so that it says player 2. I can look at this. I know it's a 2 and the game is over. It must be that player 1 won on their last turn. That is not what I intended to happen here. There you can see the big ellipse is being drawn, and still not sure why our text statement is not working. So time to check the reference manual, I think, on that. But I think we have that working, except for that little bit of a reverse psychology on the... I wanted to use the turn variable to find out who the winner was, but I forgot that the turn variable would have already been changed, and it doesn't actually show who won. It shows who the next player would be to drop a piece if they were allowed to play, even though the game should be over at this point. So still not sure why we're not seeing something around 50, 400. It could be that I drew the ellipse. I didn't. I draw the ellipse. So are we filled? The fill is white. We're doing white text on top of white squares, and that doesn't look very good. And now because we changed the fill to black, everything changed. So I really should slow down. And these are the kinds of things that I'm sure, when you're encountering them the first time, they're really difficult to deal with. So so I know this is working. The fill here is how you can use colors on processing. If you look in the reference manual, it just says that anything inside, like anything that contains some kind of area, so a square, an ellipse, it is filled with a certain color. You get to say what color it is. Normally you put in 3 numbers here, so they're red, green, and blue. So I'm currently filling with a red color for the text when I draw it on the screen, and you saw it for a moment, but the problem is we can't see it right now because, well, the circle that's drawn there is red as well. So red text on a red circle, not so easy to read. And so what we really want to do, I think, is do everything up here, do everything in white, fill everything white here. So we'll just say that. And if you want to just fill white, you can use maximum red, maximum green, maximum blue. You can shorten that down. If it's just going to be a grayscale color, you can shorten that down with just one number. Okay, so we're going to see that game over, X wins. We missed some of our drawing there. It was the way I drew the game board up here, so I'll make that white as well. And I certainly hoping you'll do a nicer job on the graphics and do some interesting colors or whatever. So this is working now. The message is appearing where we want it to appear, and it's saying the right thing because X did win, so that is the correct thing. We don't need this silly ellipse to be here any longer, so I'll just delete that. And we can also, sometimes it won't tab. You gotta delete it back until it gets to the previous line, and then it knows to indent or something. So let's just copy this down, and that is O wins. Okay, so else if could just be an else at this point. So generate a win for O, and there it says winner. Oh, we didn't check down here, did we? The if statement I have checks for a winner of one. Oh, I didn't do the game over flag. Call it a flag. Okay, so we're getting closer, and sorry for a couple little hiccups there, but we've got a message. We still can click, which is kind of silly because the game is over. And this is going to be a useful thing now that we're doing this in mouse press, because, you know, really, we don't want to check any of these things anymore. We don't want to check. All of these statements here are not worth checking because the game is done. So that means game over is true. So let's only check these if game over is equal to false. So the game is still running. If you find that confusing, you could change that to just be a number, or you could change it to be like a positive thing, so it could be a Boolean when like a game on. Okay, so now I cannot click anymore. Game's truly over. It only detected X, kind of unfair for O, because I think O won first there on the bottom. But it stopped the game, which is really useful. So I think we're getting close. We have a way of finding winners, and you know, we could do a better job of these win check for win statements. We could maybe do one that checked just to see if they're all the same and not equal to 0. That would actually you know, that would mean that that someone won. But I'll leave that for you if you want to do that. You need to check for the other rows, obviously, the columns and the diagonals. And at that point, you have a pretty decent game. Some instruction screens would be nice, perhaps a way to reset the game. I'll put a few more videos together with some of those additional features, and I'll also talk about how to write a really much more refined version using lists if you're interested. So we'll stop this here, and I hope that works out for you.